Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and alongside me is Dre from DreArea Sports.
Yo!
And today we are answering the question, who are the top 5 most important San Francisco 49ers for the 2025 season? There's a bit of a caveat. I'll explain that pretty soon. But Dre, how you doing today on this Thursday afternoon?
I'm doing great. You know, it's becoming a struggle now to find more and more news about the 49ers. So, yes, looking to break down the top 5 most important players of the 2025 season. That's a great topic. I love it. I can't wait for training camp to start. It's going to be so explosive when that goes down. But I'm excited to be here, and I'm ready to get down on this top 5 list.
All right, Dre, let's tell the people listening and watching at home what the caveat is with our top 5 most important players. You have 5, I have 5. We'll go back and forth on this, but we decided mutually we are not going to allow players like Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Fred Warner, and Nick Bosa on our lists because those are the obvious ones of no duh. Those are the most important players on this team. They're the best players on this team. You can't pick those. So these are more of the B-plus tier, C-tier players that may not be the biggest names, but could have a pretty big impact on where San Francisco ends the 2025 season. So without further ado, Dre, why don't you give me one of your top 5 most important players for the San Francisco 49ers this season?
Well, we talked about some, not going with the obvious players, but there are some players that you kind of just have to go with. I mean, my number one most important player, if we're not counting, Kittle and Brock and Warner, is got to be Christian McCaffrey. He's, without a doubt, he is the 49ers offense this coming season, and he's a player in which you're like, well, hey, wait a minute now. If he goes down, it's kind of like Steph Curry getting hurt in the playoffs, where without Steph, the Warriors' offense just doesn't work. And so without Christian McCaffrey, you lose a huge part of your offense. And not only that, but the Niners' offense is basically geared around his strengths and his skill set. And so for me, he's a huge important piece for 2025. I mean, when you go back to 2023 when he was actually healthy, he had 272 carries, over 1,000 yards, almost 1,500 yards rushing, or 1,500 yards. He had 21 touchdowns, and that's in 16 games. I mean, the guy was impactful every time he was out in the field. So he's my number one. Out of all the top 5, he's my number one most important player going into 2025.
Yeah, CMC feels like he's in that elite tier, but there's so many questions about his health and can he maintain throughout the entire season that I think it's okay to drop him down, because if he's healthy and looks fast and not slow, he may be an offensive player of the year candidate again, but because there's so many lingering questions as to can he stay healthy, will he be out there for an 18-week season, and plus hopefully playoffs are involved in that, it brings him down a peg. But I agree with you. He isn't on my list, but I do think Christian McCaffrey, when you talk about how bad last year was for San Francisco, I could argue San Francisco's offense, although they had Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy for most of the season, they didn't really have an identity. And a lot of that came from the absence of Christian McCaffrey. And you can argue that without Christian McCaffrey last season, they just didn't know who they were. Their offense didn't function very well.
Absolutely.
It was Brock playing hero ball. Obviously, there was a lot more injuries included in this conversation that we're not having just yet. But I think that when you talk about if you plucked one player away from San Francisco and said this guy's not going to be available for most of the season, Christian McCaffrey may be the most important one, not named Brock Purdy and Trent Williams on the offense. And you can even say maybe altogether he is this team's second most important piece on the entire roster, not named Nick Bosa or Fred Warner. So I agree with you there. You went really high and really a great player for your first one. Well, I'm going to bring things down a peg for mine.
Yeah, it was very high, but it was in the sense that he's so important to this team offensively that I think for me, he has to be the most important piece that has to be healthy this coming season. He's right behind me. He's right there.
Literally, he's right there.
There he is.
And you're still right because, when he's out there and he's healthy, he's an offensive player of the year. He was a near MVP.
Yes.
There are not many players in the NFL when healthy like Christian McCaffrey, the ultimate game changer, whether it's on the ground, through the air. He just does everything so well. We even saw him throwing touchdown passes 3 years ago. So he's so dynamic, as my friend Chris from 957 The Game would say, where it's like, if he's not out there, your offense looks different. And I'm a little concerned that because Deebo Samuel's no longer in the offense, he doesn't just replace Deebo when it comes to reps and play style or how they utilize him, but we saw when Deebo Samuel wasn't on the football field how Kyle Shanahan's offense just couldn't operate at all. That's my concern. So let's say it's week 4, week 5, or whoever they're playing, and Christian McCaffrey's a game-time decision. He makes a game plan around Christian McCaffrey. Boom, CMC can't play, and it's like, we don't know what we're doing now. The game plan's out the window. That is my one concern, but it goes into more your point as to why Christian McCaffrey is so important to this team's success this year. I think you're muted, brother.
Football is a game where, you really strategize, you plan based on the players you have out there. And so if McCaffrey is not there, you've installed all these plays based on having him there. And I think we saw last season when he wasn't there, we saw other players trying to fill in for him on some of these plays, namely Deebo Samuel. And you saw how he wasn't really able to kind of produce what McCaffrey did. Now, I think without Deebo there, I think it's better for the Niners because, we saw Shanahan loves to force the ball into Deebo's hands. Now he's going to end up doing that to McCaffrey, but it gives us other options on the offense. So McCaffrey is a huge, huge piece, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do this coming season.
Yeah, hopefully he's healthy for the entire year or at least the larger portion of it, but I do want to get to my top 5, and I'll give you my first player on my most important Niners list for the 2025 season. Mine is a very unpopular name, a name that most fans wish no longer played in San Francisco, a player that I think a lot of fans, if they never heard his name again, would be very, very happy. And that is center Jake Brendel. I agree. I firmly believe that if they can just get a mediocre pass blocking season from Jake Brendel, it's going to change their offensive output. Now, I'm not going to say it'll make him score 35 points a game by 2023, but I think how many times last year did we see Jake Brendel on his ass, his head in the dirt, looking back at Brock Purdy like, run, Brock, run. Like, it was almost every single game. And I do believe he's an underrated run blocker. I think he's one of the better run blocking centers in football, but he was so bad in pass blocking. It tainted a lot of people's view of him. And I think Jake isn't a great center altogether, but if he can just be mediocre as a pass blocker, you are going to see a lot of people's minds change towards him, or at least give him more of a leeway, because Jake can block his butt off on the run game. But as a pass blocker, just be average, dude. Just be near average. He was one of, if not the worst pass blocking starting center last season. Give me average. It changes a lot for what this offense can do.
No, absolutely. I mean, his pass blocking grade, he was 51st out of 64 starting centers in the league. I mean, that's really bad. I mean, that's bottom of the barrel.
That's ass.
It's ass. But his run blocking grade, he was 13th out of 64 centers. So it goes to show you that he is good when it comes to the zone run, the zone blocking scheme, and he does a good job in the run game. However, he doesn't always get to that second level. I think last year he may have been suffering from a hard case of the Super Bowl hangover. I mean, he was 9th in total snap counts. It's all courtesy of PFF. We all love PFF. And his overall grade was 65. He was 23rd out of all 64 centers, right? So if you tell me your center is 23rd, I mean, I'd want that number a little higher. I'd love to have a top 10 center. We saw Drew Dahlman was out there. He's gone. He's over in Chicago. But 51st out of 64 centers when it comes to your ranking in pass blocking. He had a 55.1 pass blocking grade. That is not going to get it done. He's actually on my list. He's my number 5 on my list.
Okay.
Because in my mind, I'm like, I'm right in the same lane as you are. If we can get just a slightly better year out of Jake Brendel, it's going to be a huge benefit for San Francisco, because if we don't, we have to go elsewhere.
But that's the issue, right? Like, on the roster now, and I think what makes one of these players like one of the most important per se is the guys behind them. Like, you're not finding another Christian McCaffrey and Jordan James and Isaac Guerrero. You're not doing that.
No.
Now, for Jake Brendel, I don't know who this team's backup center is. They have Nick Zakelj, but they like him at guard. They signed Matt Hennessy last year, who played center in Atlanta behind or after Alex Mack was gone. But Kyle Shanahan said at the owners' meeting, they like him at guard too. Hence why, to me, Jake Brendel becomes one of these most important players by default, because there's nobody behind him that can play center. Mm-hmm. And it's like, he's the only guy where you're like, hey, if he goes down, they're band-aiding things, and they don't really have a contingency plan behind him. Maybe Drake Nugent's in there, but he was a practice squad player last year. How good can he be? Hopefully great, but this idea he'll walk into training camp and win that job is pretty slim. I think Brendel almost becomes an important player simply based on the fact is there's nobody behind him they view as a potential replacement in this year or the near future afterwards.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, we've heard Shanahan, we've heard Lynch, we've heard Chris Forrester say all these positive things about Jake Brendel, and then when we watch the film, we see how bad he is in multiple plays, and not just here and there, but it's all the time. And so it becomes one of those things where you're like, hey, wait a minute, what are you seeing that we're not? Because we see him getting beat left and right. May it be in pass blocking, may it be in run blocking. Yes, he has a good run blocking grade, but the guy is not – he's not accurate in terms of, being consistent in both categories. But they keep talking about him like, hey, man, this guy's great. We love him. And a part of me thinks, hey, look, are they saying these things because they want to support their players? They want to make sure that, hey, we have your back. We're not going to throw you under the bus. And really, when you look at it, the only time they ever, even Shanahan, talked bad about a player, it was Devondre Campbell when he did his whole, I'm mad. Yeah, that was the only time you really heard that. And I would say when the media asked Kyle a few years ago about what's your comment on Jimmy Garoppolo's comments about the organization, he's like, I could care less what Jimmy has to say. You know what I mean? Like, those are he took shots at them because he felt they deserved it. That's just not who he is. He's not a guy who's going to throw anyone on the bus. I think they're always going to support their players, and they're consistent with that across the board. None of their coaches are like, oh, this guy sucks, while they're like, oh, we love him. But like I said, Jake Brendel is another integral part of this offensive line, and he has to have a better year than he had last year.
Yeah.
Do I expect him to shoot for the moon? No. However, if he just had, like, if he fails upwards, if he has a Colton McKivitz like year, then that's going to help an awful lot.
I think that Jake, one area I really want Jake to improve upon is just calling out protections in the right direction. Change, like there was too many times last year where plays were just going the wrong way, linemen were going the wrong way, to a point where I do think Jake really is the second most important offensive lineman on this roster, not named Trent Williams. But that was my first. Yours was Christian McCaffrey. Dre, go ahead and give me your second, in no particular order, 5 most important 49ers for this season.
Coming in at number 2, because we've already talked about number 1 and number 5, but number 2, I would say, is a guy by the name of D. Winters. And why is that? Because you're asking D. Winters to replace Dre Greenlaw, who not only was a, all gas, no brakes, but he set the tone for the defense. He was like, hey, if you come against us, I'm going to wreck you. Now, sometimes he would do that at the expense of his own health, but he set the tone. You didn't want to run into this guy. And I would argue that if Greenlaw was healthy, I think we win that Super Bowl second time against the Chiefs. But anyway. But, I mean, when you look at D. Winters, I mean, last year you can't really use PFF to really kind of grade where he's at. I mean, he wasn't a starter. He was kind of in and out of the lineup. I mean, this is a guy that they really need to progress. I mean, there's a reason why they didn't go with D. Winters instead of, let's say, Devondre Campbell, because he wasn't seasoned enough. He couldn't stay healthy long enough. And that's one of the biggest things with him, is that he has to stay healthy this season. And I think drafting Nick Martin is going to give him further motivation to stay healthy and to fight through some of these little naggy injuries and to excel his game, knowing that he has a guy who can possibly replace him. And so I think D. Winters is my number 2 player that was most important, because when you had Greenlaw and Warner, 2 dynamic linebackers out there, it made a huge difference. And even in a season where you had the pass rush wasn't the greatest, when the year we went to the Super Bowl, they were still, you saw how much they were being used to stop in the run game, to stop the tight ends. They did so much work to keep that defense where they're at. And when you lost Dre Greenlaw last year, you saw a huge dip with Devondre Campbell. So to me, D. Winters is a very important piece moving forward.
Yeah, D. Winters is also my number 2 player on my list as well. And I think everything you said is basically correct. And I agree with you, the fact that while you are not going to have a 1-for-1 replacement for a player like Dre Greenlaw, he was just too darn good. He was going to be and is now the best linebacker on another team. He just happened to be the number 2 in San Francisco because Fred Warner is so good and a perennial All-Pro. That said, D. Winters really needs to improve his run defense. That was a reason as to why he wasn't playing on base downs to begin the year. But he was, and I think you have, if you do the stats in front of you from PFF, I think he was one of the highest graded coverage linebackers in football last season. I think it was upwards in the 90s at a certain point last year.
His coverage grade was 80. He was a 6th ranked linebacker in coverage. So coverage-wise, he was great. It's because he's fast. He's fast.
Yeah. He's an athlete, all gas, no brakes. He has the speed necessary to play in a San Francisco 49ers defense. He has that sideline-to-sideline speed that Saleh and DeMeco Ryans really covet. And I think that all the talk of, well, Nicholas Martin's a 3rd-round pick and he'll overtake D. Winters, I don't think that's the case. I think if San Francisco really wants to be successful and wants to go back to the playoffs, although Winters isn't, Fred Warner, he is going to be a very important piece of the defense this year. His coverage skills already are going to be, coveted, and that's what you want. But if he can improve his run defense, get bigger, get stronger, which it seems like he already has in OTAs and whatnot, bulking up, hoping he can be more durable during the year, be a better tackler. He's overrunning plays and does, in some form or fashion, have traits of Dre Greenlaw, where great coverage player, but sometimes he's almost too invested in a player. I'm trying to say, like, this overruns plays. It's over aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, dude, like, if you can just be more, controlled chaos. That was what Dre Greenlaw needed to be at times. If Winters can be in that group of controlled chaos as a linebacker, you're going to see this defense be tremendous over the middle of the football field. And when you have so many offenses nowadays targeting inside the numbers, and you already have one of the best, guys that can take away that spot, middle of the defense being Fred Warner, you give D. Winters on the boundary playing next to him, covering linebacker or covering running backs and tight ends, and maybe at times bigger receivers. It's going to change how opposing offenses play them. But also, if the defensive line comes to play this year and they can actually get teams into longer third downs, you're going to see D. Winters' coverage ability come into play more often than not, and it's going to be a big game changer for them. So we're on the same page with our number 2 player being D. Winters. I want to move on to our number 3 player, Dre. You talked about your number 2 first. I'll give you my number 3 first, and fingers crossed they aren't the same player, because my number 3 most important San Francisco 49er going into this season is wide receiver Ricky Pearsall.
After Zoomies at the dog park, it's time for Drive Up at Target. In goes a big bag of kibble and 1 squeaky chicken toy for the good boy. Drive Up that's ready when you are, only in the Target app. Just tap Target.
Is that your guy?
He is. He's my guy. He was actually next on the list, was Ricky Pearsall.
Okay.
So let's go right into it.
Let's do it. So you don't have Brandon Ayuk for what seems like probably until late October, maybe early November at the latest. And obviously you want BA to come back and be fully healthy and look like his former self. But then in the meantime, it's Pearsall, it's Jennings, it's Demarcus Robinson, it's Jacob Cowing. It's a lot of guys that do not have the skill set of Ricky Pearsall. The speed, the separation they can create against man in zone coverage. And I think all of that is very coveted in this offense, where you saw Brock Purdy with the healthy Brandon Ayuk 2 years ago flourish, having that man separator, guy that knows where to sit inside zone coverage, create open space for them. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful and thankful is the word I want to use here, because he's out there bulking up and working with Purdy, Kittle, and Cowing during the offseason, getting himself ready. And I'm really hoping that with the full offseason ahead of him and a full training camp session, a full preseason, barring injury, which he's already hurt, if he can stay healthy, I think Pearsall becomes this team's number 1 wide receiver. Nobody else on the roster that is healthy can do what he does every single play. Mm-hmm. And we saw his near ascension late in the year. He played really great against the Lions. And I think you saw a first-round talent kind of blooming late in the year. And I think you would have saw it earlier had he not got shot during the offseason. And I think now when he's not got a bullet in him and will be healthy, you're going to see Pearsall come to play and really become an important factor in this offense from week 1, hopefully until whenever he's retired.
No, absolutely. I mean, you look at Pearsall, he's 6'3", 189 pounds, a first-round draft pick. They traded up to get him? No, they didn't. They made a trade, right at the very end of the first round. But they took him, and this is a guy that nobody saw the Niners taking. They saw something in this guy. He ran a 4.41 40, so he has speed, but he got shot. And I was like, I thought that was a fake article when I first saw it. I was like, no way, whatever. And then it turned out to be true. And again, I think that also kind of derailed the 49ers and what their offense could do, because now you had Brandon Ayuk, who was clearly out of shape. You had Deebo Samuel, clearly out of shape and suffering from
20 pounds overweight.
20 pounds overweight at multiple times this season, and he was hurt at times as well. No Christian McCaffrey, but we saw the ascension of like a Jawan Jennings, which was really, really good. But Pearsall, I think, brings a lot more to the table than even what Jennings can do. I mean, his overall receiving grade is 63.9, but a lot of these PFF grades, you can't really take them with much merit, because the fact of the matter is he was injured most of the year. He was shot. You know what I mean? It's one thing if you tore a muscle, but he got shot. So that's like a whole recovery process.
It's really funny to watch the fan base react in a moment and then look back on that moment and just kind of laugh and go like, wow, had you just been patient, had you just kind of let things play out. And in the moment, and I can tell you exactly where I was the minute Pearsall got picked. And in a mock draft leading up to that draft, 2024, I had San Francisco taking him in round number 2. I didn't think they'd go at 31 overall,
No.
Ricky Pearsall. That said, at the time, they had Brandon Ayuk, albeit he wasn't signed yet. They had Deebo Samuel, albeit they were talking about trading him. But at the time, it felt like there was a redundancy. It was a luxury pick because you have 2 other guys. You have Juwan Jennings. Like, why are you taking Pearsall for? But now, like, that pick felt like and feels like a necessity. Like, thank God they drafted Ricky Pearsall. Could it have been somebody else? Sure. But I think just having Ricky Pearsall on the roster, having him waiting in the wings to take over for Deebo Samuel, like, think about this. If they never drafted Pearsall, say it was Cooper DeJean, say it was Roger Rosengarten from who's now with the Baltimore Ravens at right tackle, they would have never have felt comfortable trading away Deebo Samuel this offseason. We would have had Juwan Jennings, had a great year. Ayuk under contract, cool. That's great. But like having Pearsall, the comfortability with him, knowing he's probably going to be a better player year number 2 and take that big leap in his second season, that to me tells me that they have a lot of confidence in, yeah, Deebo Samuel's contract wasn't great. He was on a downward trend, but we got Pearsall, we got Jennings, we got Ayuk, who I know is hurt now, but like it gives them more and gave them more confidence to shed Deebo Samuel's contract, get him off the team. And I think Pearsall, in the first 5 to 8 weeks, if he can stay healthy, I think we're going to see a very quick start from him because he simply has to have a good start. This team needs him to be a big factor, and he becomes one of the most important Niners on the roster to begin the season for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with what you're saying there. I think you make a really good point. Ricky Pearsall, we saw towards the end of the season, right? Once he was really healthy and integrated into the 49ers offense, we saw what he could do. And even a guy as annoying as Joe Buck, even said, I really like what this guy Pearsall can do. And we saw the type of abilities that he has. And so when you look at like his splits in December, which is towards the end of the season, in December, he had 14 catches for 200 yards and a touchdown. And that's him trying to get back into football shape, getting back into the rhythm of the offense. But we saw him take a huge leap forward. In November, he only had 4 catches. I remember everyone was like, man, where's Ricky Pearsall? What's going on with this guy? But now that he's had a full offseason, I think he's going to be a huge difference maker for this offense. And when you look back at when they drafted him, right? Like you were saying, everybody was like, whoa, what? Ricky Pearsall? I didn't see this one coming.
Yeah, Kenny 49er saying, I was screaming, draft Cooper DeJean.
That would have been pretty cool.
I think everybody was.
Everybody was. And in that draft, too, we kept saying, you got to take an offensive lineman, you got to take an offensive lineman, you got to take an offensive lineman. But there really wasn't really a really good, I mean, like Tyler Guyton was the one I thought would drop, and the Cowboys took him. So I was like, okay, now what? But, the Niners did trade with the Chiefs because I would have loved to have had Xavier Worthy. Yeah. But they made that trade, and I thought, well, who are they going to take? After Pearsall was Xavier Legette. And even him, I'm not really completely sold on that because he's another big body guy.
Oh, you love the accent. You do.
Xavier Legette.
Keep it talking like he's got molasses in his mouth.
Oh, my God.
Love it. Love it. It's great.
But I think what the Niners were doing here is, like you were saying, they saw what was on the horizon. Brandon Ayuk's contract. Does he get one? Does he not? How are we going to sign this guy? Deebo Samuel. He's getting more expensive. What do we do with him? Do we trade him? Maybe we trade him this year. Maybe we trade him next year. What do we do? And so I think it became a point where they said, hey, we need another receiver. Juwan Jennings, at the time, we knew that he was going to be, he is a good receiver, but he's not dynamic.
He wasn't near 1,000 yards, Juwan Jennings, yet.
No, exactly. And so they said, okay, let's do it. I mean, they saw what he did in the Super Bowl. They saw what he did leading up. And he was clutch, but he's not the guy. He's not the dynamic wide receiver that's going to break one for a touchdown. He's not. He's more or less like an every down receiver where he'll get you the hard first down. He'll make the cut and make the catch on the sideline for the first down and move the sticks. So he does that for you. So I think they looked at it and said, hey, look, we got to make a move. We got to get another receiver in here, and we need a receiver with speed who's a man beater, because what was the biggest problem with Ayuk and especially Deebo Samuel is they couldn't get separation in man coverage. And we saw that again this last season when you had Deebo and Jennings out there. They're not fast. They're not getting separation. And so that was one of the things.
And Debo's not physical enough at the catch point like Juwan Jennings is. Like, he's not going to use his body and his frame to go out there and make plays, where if you have Juwan Jennings out there on one side, who's a bigger guy, big slot guy, 6'3", 6'4", uses his long arms, can make plays, go up and get it, reach out and get it, and you have that shifty Ricky Pearsall on the other side, it just gives your offense more dynamic play styles to work with, which is what you'd want if Ayuk and Pearsall were there together. But we will have to wait a long time to see that. But I think that, Pearsall, like, kind of like Jake Brendel, like, he has to have a good year. He has to be, a major factor, or at least an integral piece into the offense. And if he can stay healthy, I'm not going to say, 1,000 yards incoming, but I think Pearsall can have a Brandon Ayuk-like impact on the offense where, he'll never be an all-pro, he'll never be a Pro Bowler, and Pearsall is probably never going to be a $30 million per year receiver. But I think, Ricky Pearsall is going to surprise some people that say, first round pick, ew. You're going to say this year, first round pick, look at that guy. Like, that was worth the wait to watch.
Yeah, I think that he can produce what Brandon Ayuk was doing in 2023. I think he could be that guy. I think he has the ability to do that and the ability to create separation. And because he was brought in to be a man beater, and I think he's going to give them that type of ability. Now, Ayuk still has to come back. When he does come back, it's going to take him a couple of weeks to really get into the rhythm of things. And we saw his recent posts on social media, and we're like, "What are you doing, dude? Stop!"
I love it.
But they're not trading him.
No,
as much as we talk about. Well, as much as we talk about, Terry McLaurin, the Commanders are not going to trade McLaurin. They're not, because he's healthy, he's ready to win now, and why would they want to trade? Hey, Jaden Daniel, I know you love Brandon Ayuk, but we can't wait till October to get him back. No, we got to win now, and not to mention, the Commanders' schedule is likely going to be much harder this season than it was last season, because they were coming off a down year and they got a favorable schedule, while this year, going all the way to the NFC title game, you're going to have a much tougher schedule going into 2025.
I want to say quickly what's up to the Smitty, Kyle Chipjo, Kenny 49ers, and our boy Aaron, 49ers First Takes in the YouTube chat with a super chat, saying, just checking in on my dudes, holding it down until training camp starts. Hope you are both doing well. Hashtag 49ers, hashtag no fifth gear. We're doing good, Aaron. We're doing good. We're vibing. We're surviving. Good. Thank you so much for the super chat. Next time, though, I want you to send 5 separate ones with $1. Singles only here, dude. Yeah. It's like a strip club. Singles only. Let it rain super chats with singles only. I also want to pause for 1 second to remind the folks out there, if you want to go to a Niner game this season, or with baseball in full swing, nearing the All-Star game and the trade deadline, if you want to go to any of your hometown teams' baseball games or concerts this summer, go to SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase by using our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com. And you can also grab your case of goat fuel while you're in the description as well. Click that link. It is the best energy drink on the market, better than Rockstar, better than Monster. It is, to me, the top tier drink on the market. And it's also even better because it was made by the GOAT himself, Jerry Rice. So get your tickets on SeatGeek.com and get yourself some GOAT fuel with the link down below. You can save yourself some money along the way. Okay, Dre, let's get to Kenny 49ers always puts this in here about the goat fuel. Better than booty sweat. Now, if you don't get that reference, that's from Tropic Thunder. I don't think Kenny's out here saying he likes literal booty sweat, but if you do, it's all your prerogative, brother. But that said, I have not tried the drink booty sweat just yet. But if you can give me a can, I'll give it a try live on stream. But Dre, I want to get back to our top 5 most important 49ers for this season. We have Christian McCaffrey, we have Jake Brendel, we have D. Winters, and we have Ricky Pearsall. I believe you have 2 more left.
I do.
Okay.
What do I have? 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So I have my next player is a cornerback. No, it's not Deommodore Lenoir. I have all faith and confidence in the world that he's going to have.
We have the same guy.
It's Renardo Green is the guy that I have next. And the reason why is because there's a lot riding on the development of Renardo Green. We know that he's a really good man coverage kind of player. He's only 24 years old. He's got a ton of youth on his side, but he has to make that leap this season and be the other lockdown corner opposite Deommodore Lenoir. We saw when we had Lenoir and Charvarius Ward, that made things really tough on opposing offenses. And so for me, you know, this guy had an overall grade of 69.2, courtesy of PFF. He was ranked 56th out of 222 corners. That's a lot of corners. And so with that being said, with that being said, I think that there's a lot riding on this. And not to mention, when you break down some of his PFF numbers, his coverage grade was 74.3. That's 28th amongst 222 corners. That's a huge sign of success for Renardo Green. He was also 45th with 48 tackles as well. So the guy's physical. He plays great coverage. If he could do that again this season, I think we're going to be in a really good spot. And so that's why he's my next player, because I think there's a lot riding on him, because we've seen seasons where we have a good corner and then we have a bad corner, or a corner that struggles on the other side.
Look at you, Ambry Thomas.
Ambry Thomas. You know, there's been a ton of them over the years.
Josh Norman for a while.
Oh, my God.
Was it Dre Kirkpatrick in 2021, Brian Allen in 2020.
Kirkpatrick? I can't forget.
What the hell's going on?
But, yeah, we've always seen when you have Isaiah Oliver, he was a slot corner.
That's a good one.
When you have a weakness at corner or in your secondary, the good quarterbacks will target that DB and go, yeah, that's the guy I'm going to target. Guys like Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
He will target your weakness, and he'll find ways to exploit it. It's not like I'm talking about Lex Luthor over here, but he will find ways to exploit it.
Superman comes out in 2 weeks, man. We're going to be there.
but those kind of quarterbacks, they'll do that to you.
Yeah.
And so Renardo Green has to have a good year. He has to reproduce what he did last year, and I think he has to be better as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you said is correct. I would further it to the extent of looking at the rest of the NFC West, right? The quickest way to go to the playoffs is winning your own division. And in the NFC West, in Arizona, it's Marvin Harrison, it's Michael Wilson. Mm-hmm. That's probably the worst receiving core you're going to see this year, which if Harrison becomes, you know, that top 10 pick that he was, top 5 pick that he was, that's a big guy you got to deal with. Then there in Seattle, it's, you know, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Cooper Kupp's also there. Now in Los Angeles, they upgraded in their room as well. They have Puka Nacua, and they also acquired Devontae Adams. So you can't walk into a year in this day and age with just one good cornerback. You got to have 2 of them. And, you know, Lenoir is and belongs in the All-Pro conversation, belongs in the Pro Bowl conversation. I think he's one of the most underrated and underappreciated pieces in the entire league, not just on San Francisco or in the NFC. But across from him, if you're going to let Charvarius Ward walk, who had a really bad year and a lot of context, you know, dictated why that happened, I think Renardo Green is an excellent cornerback opposite Lenoir. Whether he's playing inside or outside, he's physical. He wants to use his body against his bigger receivers. I think about, what Green will look like against Cooper Kupp or against Harrison Jr. or against Devontae Adams or against Puka Nacua. He's great in run defense for a cornerback, which most times those players, that position doesn't want to get their hands dirty. He doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. And I think when they drafted him, you can tell, that is literally just Mooney Ward all over again in a younger form. I think that's what they're hoping for. And I think, the way I would describe the cornerback position, if you can secure the boundary, and it goes hand in hand with the linebacking core, if you secure the boundary, what does that do? It forces the quarterback's vision back towards the middle of the football field. And who's there waiting for him? Fred Warner and D. Winters, two of the best coverage linebackers in football. If you have Lenore and Green on both sides of the defense, securing the boundary and forcing Stafford and Kyler Murray and, whoever's playing quarterback in Seattle, Darnold or Milroe, doesn't matter, force those guys' eyes and the ball back over the middle of the football field. That's going to create turnovers, 3 and outs, and a long, long day for opposing offenses. So I completely agree with you. That was my number 4. But Dre, if you will, can you give us your final number 5 most important San Francisco 49er walking into 2025?
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Well, I mean, I know we were just talking about Renardo Green, but when you look at the players that we've had in the past that have really plagued us when you have a weak corner, you got guys like Marquez Pope, who had one good year. And I remember he struggled when we first had him out there in the 90s. Just recently, we had, I should say recently, but not too long ago, we had Nate Clements. We thought, this is it. He struggled, but he had some good moments. And if you go even farther back, you got like Antonio Langham, who they signed. But this is a guy in Green that we drafted and we're developing. And so I think, he'll have a good year coming up in 2025. But the other guy, this is my last one. Since we picked Jake Brendel together, I have one more that I'm going to throw in there. And to me, this is another guy that it's a make or break year, and he really, really, really needs to step up, and that's Jair Brown. This is a guy, unless we go out and sign another safety, which I don't think they're going to do. People talked about Justin Simmons and all that.
Julian Blackmon,
thank you. If Jair Brown goes out there and has a year like he had last season, we're in bad shape because he was not good last season. He struggled mightily. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was because Sorensen sucked, so he sucked too. But
it's all his fault. Get him out of here.
Sorensen, get him out of here. So he has to have a bounce back year because he had a really good rookie season. He picked off Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Yeah. And then he followed up that year with a really poor season. And so for me, Jair Brown's got to step up because Malik Mustafa, we know his potential, and we saw what he can do last season. Now, he's going to miss maybe the first week or two. I don't know. It depends on, how he's recovering. If he hits the PUP list, then he'll miss the first 3 weeks. But I think Jair Brown has to hold his own out there at safety.
Yeah, I think the Niners are in better position at safety than people want to give them credit for. I get it. They're relying on some players that are unproven or players that have had one good year of two. I love Mustafa. I think he's going to be a superstar. I think he's going to be a playmaker, hopefully for a long time in San Francisco. And I get Jair Brown has, I don't want to say detractors, but he certainly does, I guess, after last season. And there's a lot of justifiable reasons for that. Terrible, run defense, bad angles at tackling, just not seeing the play at all, didn't diagnose well, and then obviously was slow in coverage, which that's not really his game as a coverage player. Hence why a lot of fans are clamoring for Justin Simmons or a free safety type player, similar to how Jimmy Ward used to play, where he wasn't getting takeaways, but he was knocking the ball down. It was great in coverage. He was, defending the football on 3rd and long and whatnot. That said, am I wrong to believe that Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant and maybe to a lesser extent Marquis Siegel can actually be sufficient enough behind Jair Brown to not make it a make or break year for him? Or at least, maybe that's not the way to word that, but to make it so if he does struggle, the bumps in the road for him are not felt as much by this defense.
I think Jason Pinnock is going to be a huge help for San Francisco in terms of covering in that safety position, giving them more depth. Yeah. But you got a lot of guys that are unproven. And so with the season we got in 2024 from Jair Brown, that's what we have to see again. Now, we know he's not fast. He's not the fastest safety out there. So he does struggle against some of the guys, with big speed. But if he doesn't play like he did his rookie season, then I see the Niners going in a different direction possibly after next season or midway through this season if he continues to struggle out there at safety. I want to see him find success. He came onto the scene kind of late in the year, dealing with some injuries when they first drafted him. But there was a lot of potential there. I remember Larry Krueger talking about Jair Brown. And then when he got out there, the guy was just nails. He was killing it.
Yeah.
He had the big pass defense in the first play, or not the first game he got put out there.
He picked off Baker Mayfield to win that game.
Yeah.
Which again
on
was like
first
45
game.
to 10, but still. Yeah.
Still. But and that was huge. And so he needs to find a way to reproduce that kind of production again. I think he really can. I don't know what happened last season. Once we get into the training camp and they start asking questions, they might bring that up, but I highly doubt he'll throw someone like Sorensen under the bus. But I think that Sorensen he was in over his head.
Yeah.
And everything slowly kind of fell apart. I really don't understand that hiring. I know they promoted him, but that was so bad. But I think Jair Brown has to have a bounce back year because you don't want to play the game where you're like, okay, he's struggling, get him out, get Pinnock out there, and all of a sudden, and then all of a sudden, they're like, oh, and you're watching the game and you go, wait, what happened to? Where's Pinnock? Where'd he go? And then you look on your phone, Pinnock, a strained hamstring. And you're like, oh, God. And then all of a sudden they got to bring, Grant out there. And, you're playing that rotation game. You don't want to do that. You want to have your mainstays out there. You want your corners. You want your safeties to be consistently out there. And that was the problem with Talanoa Hufanga. We all loved the guy, but he couldn't stay healthy. Great against the run, but the guy just could not stay healthy. And he's probably going to have the same problems in Denver as well.
It does sound like your point of view is more about maybe Jair Brown not being a top 5 most important player for San Francisco this season, but more about this season being the most important for Jair Brown's career, or at least tenure in San Francisco. But Ollie P has a great comment here in the YouTube chat, and they say, if Jair Brown doesn't pan out, it's going to look like a really bad draft class or look bad for that draft class. And I think of those first 3 picks, right? It was Jair Brown, Jake Moody, and Cam Latu. And I loved the Jair Brown pick when it first happened. Playmaking safety, awesome. This is great. And it worked out for a season and made a lot of us look right in his rookie year. Cam Latu was just a turd waiting to happen. Like I was screaming from the heavens, like, what are we doing? Like, that thing was stinky. That was like a porta potty from a mile away saying, oh, my God, it's a camping ground dookie in there. Why'd you pick that guy?
That was not good. I knew it was bad last season when he didn't show up to OTAs. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Where are you? Like,
it's funny to bring things full circle. You saying that Kyle doesn't call out players often. He called out Cam Latu.
He did.
He one of the players he called out.
He's like, you got to be here to earn a spot. Or something like that, I was like, oh.
It was like, wait a minute. Like, why is a second-year player not here?
That was weird. That was so weird. And he didn't even make the team. They cut him.
And now he's is he in Cleveland as a practice squad guy? Or
I
is
don't remember.
Is he in Philadelphia? Or
they still got Braden Willis, but, those guys, it was
I have never seen Kyle Shanahan yell at a player like he's yelled at Braden Willis on the practice field before. It was like, oh,
he can't block.
Kyle's not happy with
No.
this, but
his blocking is not good. But you know what? They brought in Luke Farrell. They brought back what's his face?
Ross Dwelly,
who I'm so happy he's back. So I think the tight end room is going to be a lot better because you have guys that know their roles, and then you got George Kittle, who's a superstar. I mean, even who was saying just the other day that he's clearly the best tight end in the league.
I think it was Rob Gronkowski today.
Yeah, Gronkowski, yeah. He said, without a doubt, it's George Kittle.
We already knew that, but thank you, Gronk.
Well, I mean, people would argue, Kelce.
Travis Kelce, yeah.
But Travis Kelce had like a mental breakdown, or he had like a midlife crisis in the Super Bowl. That was so weird.
Dude.
His stupid hair, and he just looked lost the entire time. It was like, what is happening?
2 years ago when San Francisco played in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, my wife loves Taylor Swift, went to the Eras Tour.
Oh, God.
I would never do that. That's gross to me, but teach their own. It's also my wife, so I probably shouldn't say it out in the open.
Yeah,
but
fine.
Still, she's not a big Niner fan, but like she knows I love the team and she'll root for them if I am. And she liked Travis Kelce up to that point. And the minute he was like belly bumping and chest bumping, and you've been on the sideline yelling and screaming at him, she texts me and goes, I just got the ick through my television about Travis Kelce. Like, oh my God. Like, I am like tingling with anger of how disgusting that was. And I was like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. But then like when Dre Greenlaw tore his Achilles, I was like heartbroken, crying in the corner, like, why, God, why?
Oh, his eyes lit up like, oh, cool.
Well, my wife was like laughing, not because he got hurt, but like, how the heck do you tear your Achilles running off the sideline? So I was like,
weird.
Honey, let me explain this to you. He had a calf injury. Calf injuries, like we just saw in the NBA Finals with Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah.
Don't play on calf injuries. They're terrible for you.
Or don't push it either.
Torn Achilles. Don't play on them.
My goodness.
But we talked about, Braden Willis and Jair Brown and Cam Latu, and I do want to end today's show by revealing my final top 5 most important San Francisco 49ers with a caveat at the end of it being the B-tier players that I think will, and if they are on the roster come regular season, will have a big impact on San Francisco's season, either good or bad. My final one is Jake Moody.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I think Jake Moody is... I know he's overlooked. I know he's hated for a lot of reasons. Many of those are justified, and it's earned for where he was picked, for how bad he's been, for the injury he had. I think if Jake Moody is healthy, I think he is one of the most important players on the roster. We saw during the Harbaugh era how important it was to have David Akers. We saw early on in Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's era how important it was to have Robbie Gould. He was good as gold for a reason. Unfortunately for Jake, he's been good as mold for the last 2 years. Been really bad. And you can try to justify as to why he's bad with the injury, but it's been bad in more than one aspect. Kickoffs, field goals, PATs, it's all been kind of a crap show for him. And I don't know if he's kind of, a head case and doesn't know what he's doing, or just gets in his own head and kind of freaks out. But I have seen Jake Moody make 65-yard field goals, 67-yard field goals. They told the fan base he had a perfect workout. And last year, when this team was 6-11, they played 7 or 8 one-score games. Half of those were dictated by less or equal to a field goal. If Jake Moody can start making his kicks, this team goes from 6-11 to 10-7 fighting for a playoff spot. I think Jake Moody is one of the most overlooked yet most important players on this roster coming into this year.
You could argue that some fans would say that one of the most important players is Greg Joseph because they want him to take over the kicking spot of Jake Moody. But no, I agree. Jake Moody is another player that, again, this is a make or break season. This is a make or break preseason for Jake Moody.
Training camp, honestly.
Dude, if he goes out there and he misses a kick on the first preseason game, everyone's going to light him up.
Dude.
A lot of content creators out there are going to rip into him. And there's a lot riding on his performance for himself. And we saw last season when he came back, which if he wasn't 100%, why did they rush him back? I don't get that. But we saw when he struggled, it just went from bad to worse. And
he was the second worst kicker in football last year.
He was horrible.
Second worst.
The only time I saw a kicker perform worse than him for San Francisco was back in the day when we had Owen Pochman as a kicker. Ooh. Owen Pochman was a kicker for the Niners, and he just was a disaster. And he has a very short-lived stint with the Niners, and it wasn't good.
Owen Pochman?
Pochman.
Owen Pochman.
Yes.
Who is this man? You're making up names, dude.
I'm not. I'll look him up right now. But
I got it. He was number 11. Oh, thank God. Brandon Ayuk's number.
There we go. He was horrible. And then he was so bad that I remember he missed a kick, and it was one of many he missed. And then on the kickoff, he kicked the ball out of bounds. I remember Joe Starkey was like, "This is not about having a bad kicker. This is about a player's inability to focus and concentrate on the game." You know, like I was like, "Oh
my God!"
He was even mad. He was like, "God."
I have the stats right here. Owen Pochman played 6 games for San Francisco in 2003. He made 3 of his 8 field goal attempts total.
He was bad.
Right? No. He was 8 for 15, a 53.3% field goal.
It was really. What year was that?
My God, 2003. So that's like.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks. Smooth, bright, deliciously crafted. Introducing Starbucks Sansera Blend, their smoothest, brightest coffee yet. It's a new kind of light roast, one that's packed with so much flavor, it shines no matter how you brew it. So go ahead and try it hot, iced, black, or with a splash of creamer. Visit athome.starbucks.com/Sansera-blend-coffee to bring Starbucks Sansera Blend home.
Is that like at the tail end of the Garcia era, or is that like firmly in Tim Rattay town?
Oh, God. They were 7-9 that year.
Man,
it's not a good year.
Is that Garcia? Or is that?
Let me see.
That feels like it's Tim Rattay. Let's see.
Hold on, I'm trying to find a roster.
Garcia played 13 games for them, went 5-8, benched him for Tim Rattay, went 2-1.
Yeah, this was the Dennis Erickson era. So I think this was
hell on earth.
This was Garcia on the way out, and I remember we all thought like, "Hey, Tim Rattay, this guy could be like a Peyton Manning." He was horrible.
Oh my God!
I mean, what's funny is that their offensive coordinator that year, Greg Knapp, their defensive coordinator was Jim Moore Jr. Remember him?
What a staff!
Everybody was like, "Man, Jim Moore Jr. This guy's gonna be great," and he ended up
living
going
in the upside down. My goodness.
He went to UCLA, and then nobody ever saw him again. It was bad. We had Terrell Owens. We had Fred Beasley. We had Garrison Hurst. Remember Ty Streets?
What the heck happened?
It's not a good year. Jeremy Newberry was our center. I'll take him.
So that's the year that Mariucci left for Detroit then, right?
I think so.
It would have had to have been, right? Like, it would have had to.
It's funny because you look at the players on that team, like you got Tony Parrish as your strong safety. Oh, my God, Zach Bronson. I forgot about that guy. Dude, Mike Rumpf. Ahmed Plummer. Remember him?
Do you remember Zach Kesey?
Zach Kesey.
He like Tarzan, man. That guy was awesome.
Jeff Ulbrich. Derek Smith. Oh, my God, I forgot about that guy. Julian Peterson. Andre Carter.
You think in 2003, Jeff Ulbrich knew that 22 years later, his son would text college athletes saying they were getting drafted on draft night and then get himself fined like thousands of dollars?
I know. What an idiot. I can't believe his son did that. Was it to Shadur Sanders, wasn't it?
He did to Shadur and like 2 other people.
I mean, why would you do that? I mean, come
Which,
on.
like, one is like really messed up, but also like, what a great prank if no one found out it was you.
Well,
like,
yeah.
That's incredible. It's really bad, but that's incredible. Man.
You know what, though? I think that's right. The kicker that year was Jeff Chandler, who we drafted. He was a 4th-round pick, and he got hurt, and that's when they brought him on. And then
so drafting mid-round kickers doesn't really work out for San Francisco, is what you're saying.
Doesn't. Well, Jeff Chandler was all right, but whatever. Anyway, that's going back to 2003 San Francisco 49ers.
You mentioned Owen Pochman, which I had no idea who that was.
Oh, I just found him.
Was it Jim Carney was the kicker for the Panthers? Was that his name? And the Saints?
I think so.
They're in the Super Bowl, I think, and he kicks the ball out of bounds.
Oh, for the Panthers?
And you're like, dude, what are you doing?
I know. And he gave him the ball at the 40-yard line. I was like, oh, they're fucked. I was like, dude, why would you have done that?
That game is my first memory watching a Super Bowl. I was at my house eating KFC honey barbecue wings for the first time ever. Had no idea what was happening. All I knew was we were against the Patriots. God. We were going for the Panthers. And my dad being this like yelling every expletive at the screen, like, you mother. I was like, what's going on? Face covered in barbecue sauce. My mom was like, it's okay, honey. Don't cry. Don't cry. Dad's been angry at the television. Like, that's wow. Man,
I remember watching that and I was like, all right, so here we go. And the kickoff went out of bounds. I was like, oh, what? Why? Whoa, why would you? What? And then they gave him the ball at the 40-yard line and they won the game.
What's worse? Having a field goal blocked in the Super Bowl, having your gunner run into your kick returner, leading to a fumble that leads to the opposing team's touchdown, which became the biggest difference maker in that game, and losing in overtime, all in the same game, or being Jim Carney.
I don't know. I mean, what's his name? Who missed the kick for the Bills? That was a bad one against the Giants.
Yeah.
What was his name? I forgot his name now. But that was a really bad. That was the first one.
That was Owen Pochman, actually.
Yeah, right. but that was the first one when he missed the kick. Against the Giants. That was the first of many, like, oh, kickers can screw you over. Oh, man, this is not good. And not to mention the long snapper for the Broncos. First play of the game against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. He hikes the ball right over Peyton Manning's head. I was like, oh, my God. That was the end of the game right there.
Dude, I was a junior in high school, being like, I have my thesis due the next day, 20-page or paper has to get done. Walked in, said, I'll watch the Super Bowl instead. I'll figure things out later. Watched the first snap and said, never mind. I'm going to go work on my paper. It's over.
And I hated the Seahawks too. I hated them so bad. Yeah. And I remember watching that and I was like, okay, because not only was it a safety, but of course when you get a safety, the other team gets the ball. I was like, so the Broncos just spotted them 2 points. That's great. And then Seahawks proceeded to just completely destroy the Broncos. I remember a lot of analysts were like, I'm going with Denver. I think that offense is just too good. And it didn't work out. And I honestly, okay, now we're getting a little carried away. This is rabbit holing. But honestly, I felt like the first time we played the Chiefs, I thought that was going to happen. I was like,
really?
I thought our defense was going to just rip him apart because our defensive line had been so dominant that year. And in reality, until the fourth quarter, our defense was shutting them down. Yeah. The problem is, and what happens every time, or both times, the Niners play the Chiefs, is that the offense can't fully pull away from them.
Yeah.
Because Spags always has free rushers coming at the quarterback. And there's something about Spags going against Kyle Shanahan. He seems to be able to figure out what Kyle Shanahan is doing and find holes in his offense. I don't know what it is. I hope the next time we get to the Super Bowl that it's not the Chiefs, it's somebody else. And Kyle Shanahan will probably be like, all right, now we're going to kick these guys' ass. Because that's what they need. They need to get to the Super Bowl and whoop someone's ass. And everything will be gravy at that point. Like, oh, we did it. Yes. Yes. That's what was so great.
We did it. We did
it. Woo! That's what was great when we beat the Texas Rangers with the San Francisco Giants.
Oh, yeah.
They kicked the crap out of them. I mean, we lost one game, but like every game we were just dominating them, And it was just like, oh, this is great. This exercise all the demons. You're just like, oh, this is great. And even Madison Bumgarner being a rookie pitcher just completely shut them down. Dominant. You're just like, wow.
tying things back into what the actual topic of this podcast was supposed to be.
Like, this is the Giants 2014 beer mug. There we go.
They can't win games against the Marlins, but they can win 3 World Series in 5 years.
God, 10 runs they gave up. I was like, what's going on?
Dude, just terrible. But wrapping things up here, our top 10-ish or so most important San Francisco 49ers were, I believe, Christian McCaffrey, Jake Brendel, D. Winters, Ricky Pearsall, Bernardo Green, Jair Brown, Diamador Lenore, I think he was in there too, and Jake Moody. I am a little shocked. Neither one of us took a single defensive lineman.
You know, I thought about that.
Didn't take Michael, didn't take Alfred Collins, didn't take Bryce Huff, couldn't take Bosa, but, still.
I think, and I don't want to go into it, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be Alfred Collins, because the guy hasn't been healthy yet, and we haven't seen what he can really do, and he hasn't proven he can stay healthy. I know it's really early in his career, but that's a guy who needs to really step up when he is healthy and show the rest of the league and the organization, what he's capable of doing in the NFL. But another guy that's got to bounce back is Bryce Huff, man. If that guy comes back and he's got to be at least a Samson Ebukam. You know what I mean? Like, he has to at least get to that level. If he's less than that, then it's like, dude, this is a waste.
Which, Ebukam is the most, vanilla, gets the job done edge rusher in football.
That's what I'm
saying.
saying.
You love him. You love him. He's fine.
I love the guy, but I'm giving him, the easiest comparison. Like, hey, if you can do what Samson Ebukam did, I'll take it. It's like, we almost went to the Super Bowl with him.
It was 30 tackles and 7.5 sacks and 30, not many. Man, I mean, again, they're trying to recreate that 2021, 2019 defense. Just give me half of what D Ford gave you in 2019, but play every single game and I'll be cool with it.
Yeah.
Dre, it was great having you on. Great to talk the top 5 or top 8-ish most important San Francisco 49ers, not including Brock and Fred and Nick Bosa and all those guys. Let everybody know in the YouTube comments on the audio podcasting platforms where they can find you on social media and your show.
You can find me on X over at DreArea Sports, on YouTube at DreArea Sports. Make sure to go to my channel, like, share, subscribe. I go live at least two to three times a week. And I actually had another stream scheduled for this time with Raj from our RSF Niners, but he canceled because he had something else that came up. And that's why when you were like, hey, can you do this? I was like, I could do it at 6, because that's when I had set up. And you were like, let's do it. So yeah.
Timing is everything.
It is. And you can also follow me on Instagram at DreArea Sports. If you want to support my channel, obviously just go and subscribe to my channel. That's all I ask. Anything more than that, you can join me on Patreon. But yeah, DreArea Sports on YouTube, X, and Instagram.
We have one question. I'll get to it really fast here, though. And yes, everyone go subscribe to DreArea on YouTube. Benali P asks, what's up with Alfred Collins? Is it a health thing? Is it a contract thing? A little bit of both. Wants a fully guaranteed contract, thanks to Jaden Higgins in Houston. Also has an ankle injury. Supposed to be okay by training camp, but time will tell. That said, you can follow this show on social media and myself on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And if you could, I'm setting a goal today. I want to get 50 audio podcast reviews by the beginning of the 2025 San Francisco 49ers regular season. Let's see if we can get there. Don't fail me now, YouTube and audio podcast audience. So go down there, give us a review, whether it's 5 stars or 0 stars. Tell us what you think of the show. How can we get better? What's been worse? Tell me all your thoughts in the comments below. And if you can as well, drop your top 5 most important San Francisco 49ers, not including Brock Purdy, Nick Bosa, George Kittle, and Fred Warner. And with all that said, my name is Sterling Bennett. That is Dre from DreArea Sports. And as always, until next time, stay faithful.